All right, guys, so the mainstream liberal media is doing their best right now to ignore the Hunter Biden email laptop story after it's been confirmed by one of their own, the New York Times. I mean, it was confirmed by one of their own just a few months ago. Politico actually confirmed the story as well, too, but they swept that under the rug because Politico isn't as legit as the New York Times, right? Even though the New York Times is fake news. But one of their own fake news outlets, the ones that they trust, the New York Times, confirmed the authenticity and the existence of the Hunter Biden laptop that was left in Delaware with these scandalous emails and pictures and other things on the laptop that we should probably be paying attention to, but we're not. They confirmed the existence of the laptop. In the mainstream liberal media, they don't really want to talk about it because at the time when this story first came out, they dismissed it as Russian disinformation. They said it was fake news. It was a right-wing conspiracy that was created by Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani trying to smear Joe Biden before the election, right? That's what they said, okay? And now, almost, 2 years later, they're eating their words, right? It's almost like the conspiracy theorists on the right are always right. That's literally what it seems like, okay? The conspiracy theorists are right. Maybe the mainstream liberal media should be treated as a conspiracy theorist, okay? And maybe the conspiracy theorists should be the mainstream media, right? Maybe that's how it should be. That's kind of what it seems like. But with that being said, one of the people, right, that were one of the main proponents of this is just Russian disinformation, that these are not real, that's just right-wing conspiracies, was CNN's failing, balding, phallus-shaped Humpty Dumpty looking news anchor Brian Stelter. And Brian Stelter was confronted by Breitbart News on his assertion that the Hunter Biden emails were Russian disinformation, and Brian Stelter refuses to walk back the claim. So we're actually going to get into that. But before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know, if you like my channel, you like my commentary, you want to support my channel, feel free to do so using the links in the description below. You can support the Patreon, you can support the PayPal, you can support the merch. There are multiple ways to support the channel you'd like to do so, including getting yourself one of my signature racist mugs, which is a daily reminder of the 2022 definition of racist according to the left, which is anybody who disagrees with the Democrat Party. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. And the first thing we're going to do is actually going to play a clip from 2020 when these emails first came out. And Brian Stelter at the time was actually confronted by fellow colleagues and other journalists about why he is characterizing these emails as fake news, but yet he decided to treat other stories that were particularly anti-Trump as if they were true. And he absolutely melted down during this exchange. Take a look.
There is anything real in them.
Yeah, but that didn't stop any from reporting the Mueller and the dossier and all that stuff.
You're bitter. I understand that you have a lot of resentment about it.
Now we have ethics. Okay, now we have ethics.
Don't you dare act like newsrooms didn't have ethics in 2017 and 2018.
Well, I know they did. So, well, you can don't dare me all you want, Brian. I've been doing this for 30 years. So say whatever you want. It's my view, and I have a right to say it. I was invited on.
So your view is that the news media was unethical with Mueller?
Hang on, so one at a time. I don't quite get
it's my view. So.
Let me bring in Sarah Fisher, and then I want to move on to Google briefly. But go on, Sarah.
I think this conversation is so critical, even though it can get tense. It's actually a matter of, can you have two things be true at once? Can you have a story that needs scrutiny from all outlets because we don't know whether or not it's true, right? Axios, we're all trying to figure out whether or not this story is true, and we deserve to do that. But we also need to think about the bigger picture, which is, God forbid, this story was tied to some sort of bigger disinformation effort to penetrate our elections. We also need to consider that. And that's why I think it's critical that you're not just you got to see the forest through the trees. You got to look at this particular story about the Hunter Biden.
Yeah, but no one looked through the forest through the trees with the president. I mean, it's always one-sided. Now it's time to look at the forest. All I'm saying is let's do it universally, okay? I didn't discard the Mueller stuff. I was much more skeptical because I knew the sourcing. And I knew where I came from on Capitol Hill, where I have stood in the building for the past few decades. I had real reason to doubt that stuff, and I constantly did. And it turned out a lot of it was a bunch of bunk. So
when you say Mueller stuff, there are people in prison.
We have to use that skepticism. We have to. Even now with the Biden stuff, let's use the skepticism, but don't ignore it.
Okay, Susan, let's just Brian come back in this, and then I'm going to ask Tony to help us through the Google case. Brian, go ahead.
I agree with you. It should not be ignored, but I think there's a difference between reporters looking into it in their newsrooms versus going on the air with it when it's unvetted. And what we're in right now is
You never did that with Trump stuff. That's just
Of
BS.
course we do.
Hang on a second, Susan. Go ahead, Brian.
Whatever.
Susan,
Yeah,
you have no idea how this
Susan,
newsroom
just a second.
operates.
If you both speak, we can't hear either of you. Brian, go ahead.
I understand. Let me just say briefly, it's grievance politics. It comes from the right. It happens every day. Newsrooms in America are very careful about this stuff. I know viewers and readers don't see it, but it happens every day. Slow, cautious vetting happens every day.
Okay, I do want to move on.
Bullshit. All right, that's what that is. That's nothing but bullshit. Okay, that's what it is. Because Brian Stelter sitting here acting like they carefully vet news stories, right? They do that across the aisle, regardless of who it benefits politically, according to him, right? We carefully vet news stories, and you just don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Right. That's why you guys took the Steele dossier seriously. Okay, you running around here parading people like Michael Avenatti, right? Who was a fraud, who was a scamster, and some type of hero, right? That's why you guys did that. Okay, you took the Trump PP tapes seriously, right? The CNN newsroom reported on that, okay, as if it was fact. Every story that was anti-Trump, these people ran with it no matter what. Didn't matter what the sourcing was. Didn't matter how ridiculous it was. They ran with it, okay? And the Steele dossier is literally proof of that. That was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life, okay? Trump getting peed on by Russian prostitutes. That is a story that the mainstream liberal media ran with. But, you know, that wasn't too outlandish to, hey, you know what? Let's be cautious with that. No. They ran with that because it was something they liked, okay? But when it comes to Hunter Biden emails, oh, we got to be cautious, right? We just can't run with every news story. We got to carefully vet, right? But you didn't carefully vet the allegations that this was Russian disinformation, right? Because that requires vetting as well, too. For you to say that these emails are Russian disinformation, that means that you need evidence that this came from Russia. That's also a part of the news story as well. But you did not hesitate to speculate and to strongly assert that that was the origin of these emails, right? Which, you know, now it seems like you're just objectively wrong, right? You're just objectively wrong on that, okay? So, again, fast forward to today, Breitbart confronts this man on him strongly implying that Hunter Biden's laptop emails were Russian disinformation, and allegedly he's denying here. So, Breitbart wrote a long article on this, but what we're going to do is skip all that and just read the text exchange that they had with Brian Stelter. It looks like this may have been on Twitter, in which they reached out to him and he actually responded. So let's read here. Hey, just curious. When did I claim Hunter Biden laptop emails were likely Russian propaganda? Can you send me the quote? That is what Brian Stelter said. And it says, glad to see you reading Breitbart. Do you stand by your claim that these emails may have been made up and you used the phrase Russian disinformation on your show to describe them? Do you stand by that? Or are you retracting those comments you made on your show? And then they sent the proof. Basically a snippet of the mainstream liberal media, including Brian Stelter, basically implying that these emails, or flat out claiming really at some points, that the emails were Russian disinformation. Let's actually take a look at it.
Biden's secret emails.
A really fishy story.
The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019.
The FBI is now investigating whether those alleged Hunter Biden emails are actually connected to a larger foreign intelligence operation.
They may be related to a foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence operation.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Part of a Russian disinformation effort.
Described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks.
All the hallmarks, rather.
All the hallmarks of a Russian
disinformation.
Russian disinformation.
Disinformation campaign.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
Yeah, so as you can see there, that is the clip of Brian Stelter basically characterizing the Hunter Biden emails as Russian disinformation, which everybody in the mainstream liberal media was doing at the time. Okay, now again, that clip there, as you saw, is cut up to basically show what all the mainstream liberal media was basically saying about these emails in a very short time span, about a minute. Okay, so let's actually see what Brian Stelter's response is to this. So he says, "So you clearly can't back up your assertion that I claim Hunter Biden's laptop emails were likely Russian propaganda," right? So he puts that in quotes, and he says, "Thanks for confirming that what you wrote is false." So I think what Brian Stelter is implying here is that, well, what you're saying is false because you can't say that I said word for word, verbatim, that Hunter Biden's laptop emails were likely Russian propaganda. That's what Brian Stelter is saying. Okay, I'm assuming he's replying or referencing this cut up clip. Okay, so with that being said, let's see what Breitbart's response is. "I just confirmed that what I wrote is absolutely correct. We consider all of your answers here on the record and are prepping a follow-up story on you. Are you saying you did not say that Hunter Biden's emails were Russian disinformation and were possibly made up? Do you stand by those statements you made on your show, or do you retract them now?" So at this point, it looks like Brian Stelter goes ghost, right? He stops responding, okay? Because now it looks like he's not responding, and the conversation is now about Brian Stelter possibly being out at CNN because of all the scandals that are going on there and the misconduct going on there, and how Brian Stelter probably is going to get caught up in it and fired and released from the network. That's probably going to happen, right? But with that being said, again, Brian's not responding. But I think that his last response here, he's basically implying that this clip, this cut-up clip, is not evidence of him actually saying that Hunter Biden's laptop emails were likely Russian propaganda, even though it is clear that he was referencing those emails when he made the statement about Russian propaganda. So that being said, I actually have the receipts. I have the full segment that Brian did with that quote about Russian propaganda in reference to these emails. And I want you guys to take a look at it and decide for yourself what Brian Stelter is trying to say here. Take a look.
And let's break down how this all happened, because it was launched, as I showed you, by the New York Post and then promoted by another Murdoch media property. That, of course, is Fox News. You worry about Trump's corruption, and Fox says, what about Biden? Every hour of the day. So Fox is a producer of this serialized drama, but there are big questions about who might have created this show. And that's what's probably most important here. CNN reported on Friday that U.S. authorities are seeing if those emails we just talked about are connected to an ongoing Russian disinformation effort. Now, we already know some of the American producers of this drama, because the New York Post says it was tipped off to the existence of the emails by Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon. Then Rudy Giuliani gave the Post a copy of a hard drive containing the emails. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019. And a shop employee saw the emails and then was worried about getting in trouble or getting in danger, and he made copies of them. There's a lot about this story that does not add up. And the employee has not helped matters. He has contradicted himself in interviews with reporters. And, I mean, for all we know, these emails are made up, or maybe some are real and others are fakes. We don't know. But we do know that this is a classic example of the right-wing media machine. A tip from Bannon and a hard drive dump from Rudy led a former producer for Sean Hannity's show to write a story for the New York Post that gets splashed on the front page that Rudy then used to trash the Bidens all over Fox, and they're doing it almost every hour of the day. And Trump has been hyping the drama for days on end, and this is how it goes on and on. Now let's pull up Don Jr.'s tweet from just a little while ago. He says, how will the media attempt to sweep this one under the rug? That is the meta narrative. That's the big story they're telling. All about grievance and bias and victimhood. So let's talk about the significance of these manufactured scandals.
Yeah, so in that clip, did Brian Stelter verbatim say that Hunter Biden's emails were Russian disinformation? No, he didn't. But did he strongly imply that they probably were? Yes, he did. He also strongly implied that they were made up, or that this was just some right-wing conspiracy. He strongly implied that stuff. Okay, and see, this is how the media plays the game, because, you know, you can go out here and carefully word things where, hey, you can say, look, I never made that claim verbatim. I didn't say that. right? But, you know, if you go back and look at the clip and you listen to the context of what he's saying, what he's trying to imply, the message that he's trying to portray to his audience, that he's trying to get across his audience, he's clearly trying to tell his audience that, hey guys, this is not real, right? This is a right-wing conspiracy and possibly Russian disinformation. CNN has sources to tell us that authorities are investigating whether or not it's actually Russian disinformation, which means, wink, wink, that it is Russian disinformation. Now, you have CNN anchors like Wolf Blitzer, who was more direct, right, in some of his segments about making the claim of the emails being Russian disinformation. Brian Stelter, not so much. He was a lot more careful about it. But again, that doesn't change the fact that, like some of the journalists in that first video I showed you guys were pointing out, is that the mainstream media is very selective in regards to what stories they choose to vet and which stories they choose not to vet. Any negative story about Trump, about Republicans, they will run with it. They don't care, okay? But all of a sudden, when it comes to a story that is negative in regards to the Democrats, oh well, we gotta vet it, right? We gotta actually go through the sources. We gotta make sure it's legit, and that's kind of the problem here. Like, that's the point that's being driven home here, right? When it seems like almost every single time this happens, it seems that the story that they dismissed, right, that they said was made up, actually turned out to be true, and the stories that they claim they vetted so heavily, like the Steele Dossier, okay, that the mainstream liberal media was like, oh, this is verified, right? This is vetted. Those things turn out not to be so true, okay? And that's kind of the whole point here, is that Brian can sit here and play the semantics game and say that, oh, well, I didn't say that verbatim, but it doesn't change the fact that you ignored the story. You told your audience to ignore the story because you strongly implied that it was made up and that it was Russian disinformation. And when confronted about this, instead of just owning up to it and just saying, hey, you know what, you're right, we did not do our due diligence on this story to actually give it a real chance, because regardless of any evidence that could have been presented to them, they weren't going to give it a real chance because it didn't fit the narrative that they wanted. Instead of just owning up to it, he'd rather just, you know, ghost and act like it never happened. So I'm not surprised, but let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.